Us that were not supporters of Joe Biden and those of us that knew he was a serial liar and plagiarist for his entire life, we've not been surprised by his false claims. Too many to count since he jumped on the campaign trail, and certainly since he was led into the Oval Office to fall asleep in his ice cream. But his lies have often been very hurtful. Take what happened in Maui just a few days ago. He turned a human tragedy with more than 115 killed and as many as 1,000 Hawaiian residents missing, Americans missing and killed after a firestorm swept through the once very cool city of Lahaina. He took that moment to make it about himself, of course. First, he couldn't pull himself away from his luxury oceanside vacation in California for almost 2 full weeks. And when he did finally bother to show up in Maui, he talked about a small kitchen fire in his Delaware beach house that was put out in about 20 minutes. But the narcissist in chief decided to tell those in Maui how he was so devastated by that fire because he almost lost his cat and he almost lost his car. He made these comments in front of people whose family members were incinerated by a wall of fire and it was left to burn because one of the people in charge there believes that water is some godlike substance and could not be spared to spare the lives of those being burned alive for hours. Now, of course, it's not the first time that Biden has made an unspeakable tragedy about himself. In fact, you can pretty much count on him doing that. If there's death, destruction, then Joey's ready to step up and tell you why he understands your pain, because, by God, he's been there, and he has suffered like you. Well, except that he really hasn't. I mean, has Joe Biden suffered terrible loss in his life? Yes. A wife and daughter in a car wreck 50 years ago and a son to cancer, sure. But that doesn't make it the same as what these people in Hawaii just went through, or worse, his disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, when tragedy there could have been avoided with leadership. Millions of people that voted for Joe Biden falsely bought into the idea that old Joe was going to be a moderate, a good old grandpa type, middle-of-the-road president that would work hard to unite the nation, but that has not turned out to be true at all, has it? In fact, I think it's fair to argue Joe Biden has become the most polarizing president in American history. He's not a moderate at all, and has governed from the extreme far left. And his presidency began to unravel just a few months into office when he completely disregarded the advice of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and his military advisors and abandoned Afghanistan in some twisted need to leave before we mark the 20-year anniversary of being in the country. The reckless decision, the fractured command, and the murky rules of engagement led to the worst military failure since the end of the Vietnam War. 13 U.S. military members were killed by a suicide bomber and his partner. Both could have been neutralized, taken out by American snipers before that bomb ever went off, but nobody would make the call. Biden's numbers plummeted and he has never recovered, and there are some very clear reasons for that. True to form, Joe Biden has never accepted responsibility for his epic failure of leadership in Afghanistan. Never, not once. But worse, almost every time it comes up, he brings up his son, Beau, and talks about how he died in the Middle East and came home in a casket. The problem, of course, is that is just another terrible lie that seems to percolate in the addled and dementia-filled mind of a senile old man. Beau did serve proudly in the military, but he died of cancer. He didn't die on the line of service, not at all. And worse than not accepting responsibility and making his tragic failure into some sad false story about himself is that he continues to make those same babbling, baseless claims even now. For the 13 Gold Star families, they met the caskets of their loved ones at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and so did Joe Biden. But he didn't want to be there. No, he kept looking at his watch. He didn't care about the men and women that died because he was too stubborn or too stupid to listen to his military advisors. And sadly, as we mark the 2-year anniversary of those horrible days this week, the families have never believed he cared about anyone but himself.